Welcome to the wonderful world of wine, exploring all things wine with you. We are your hosts, Kim Simone and Mark Lindsay, and you can find us on Facebook at The Wonderful World of Wine. Hello and welcome to this week's installment of The Wonderful World of Wine. I am co-host Kim Simone here with my partner in wine crime, Mark Lindsay. How are you tonight, Mark?
I'm good, Kim. Geez, we haven't used that partner in wine crime thing in a long
Every
time.
once in a while, I like to throw it in there. You know, It's I think it's very descriptive and apropos, and you coined it. So I think every once in a while we need to throw it out there.
We try to stir up some wine trouble every once in a while.
That's right. I call Mark my wine buddy. So every once in a while, I'd be like, "Oh, my wine buddy down in Franklin."
That's it. Unfortunately, we have a lot of wine buddies. People.
That is true. We all have a lot of wine buddies, but I would say that in the my large group of wine buddies, you are right there.
See,
you're the Good. Inner circle
top
dude.
10. I'm number 5 on speed dial at least.
You're definitely textable right there on my phone. Yes.
Well, that's why we can talk to our listeners all day and have so many shows going here that we're always finding content and love talking wine.
And there's always something new and something changing. So as our longtime listeners know, we like to keep up to date with current trends and topics in the wine world, but sometimes we like to focus on a little bit more of a specific topic during our shows. So most of today's show, we're actually going to be talking about wine in restaurants, which for Mark may be slightly uncharted territory because he only goes there to eat and doesn't necessarily have any work experience in restaurants. And my work experience in restaurants is really, it's embarrassingly limited to only one job where I was sort of catapulted to the top without having ever been a server, which I'm still kind of embarrassed about. But
that was a major job, though.
It was a major job, and I miss it. But anyway, it is nice to be able to understand that, when we talk about wine and we talk about the wine industry and the wine market and where and how you, the general consumer, participates in enjoying wine, it's generally in one of two places. You've either purchased your wine at a retail shop and then have brought it home to enjoy it, or you are dining out at a restaurant. And so we really can't discount the restaurant experience because we know that so many people learn about new wines or experience a new wine for the very, very first time at a restaurant, because there is this thing about, it seems a little bit safer for a lot of people to order a glass of something new at a restaurant and experience a new either style or producer or grape variety by the glass at a restaurant versus buying a whole bottle of it at a retail store. So we often will hear from importers and distributors that the first level of getting the public to understand and appreciate a particular type of wine is through the restaurants. So I think even though Mark and I aren't necessarily directly involved in restaurants anymore, it's still important for us to talk about it and to bring that point of view to you, our listeners, because it is such an important part of the industry.
It's a big thing in the wine world, and unfortunately with the COVID and the pandemic hitting, they took a big hit. But we're always telling the listeners, giving tips of what we feel they should know, what's going on in the restaurants, the trends, and how to order and things like that. So we thought we'd hit with a couple of articles today on restaurant trends.
That's right. So our first one is about this device that was invented here in Massachusetts about 15 years ago by a medical scientist who used his knowledge of medical devices to develop a wine preservation system. And it's called the Coravin. Now, if you know anything about sort of wine gadgets and wine tchotchkes, you've probably heard of the Coravin. So the Coravin is this device that looks a little bit like one of those rabbit corkscrews. It's kind of big and bulky, but it doesn't remove the cork from your bottle of wine. What it does is it inserts a very, very thin needle through the cork and into the bottle of wine, and it extracts a small portion of a few ounces at a time. You are taking a sample of the wine from that bottle, technically without introducing any oxygen to the bottle. So what you should be able to do is take tastes of the wine over the course of months, maybe years, and see how that wine is developing if you're doing it in your own private cellar, or how it has turned into a restaurant use is that restaurants will use it to offer tastes of wines that are either prohibitively expensive or very hard to come by, and they only have the allocation of maybe a couple bottles a year. And it gives them the opportunity to provide their guests with something special on their wine list. Like, you can purchase a 2-ounce taste of this very special bottle of wine from, maybe a particular vintage or a particular producer that you wouldn't necessarily want to open the entire bottle of because it might cost you, hundreds or maybe even thousands of dollars. But if you're willing to splurge on that taste, then you get the experience of tasting a wine you might otherwise never, ever be able to taste in your lifetime.
Yeah, and this article is when should restaurants use this device? And wine enthusiasts really went in deep on the good points about when it should be used and trying to get feedback from wine consumers. What do they think about it when it's used in the restaurant? And I purchased one probably 2 years ago, which for me was a long wait because it was a gadget. I was
going to say, I'm surprised you only got one 2 years ago, because this has been like the gadget for at least the last decade.
Exactly. The gadget. And I think
I
purchased it and had to put it away. And I told my family to give it to me for Christmas or something. And I forgot about it. And it was one of the things I bought.
No way.
And I told them to give it to me as a gift because it runs, like $200. Mm-hmm. And at the time, one of the wine societies ran a deal and I got it that way. And it's really a nice device. If, like you said, Kim, if you just want to draw a little bit out, you insert the needle. It then, when you take the wine out, it injects argon gas. It has a little canister, which can add to the cost of the device as well, because you get maybe 20 pours before that little gas tank goes empty.
I want to touch on that later a little more too.
But when I was learning certain wines, it worked out great for me because I'd have maybe 12 wines and I'd just take one glass. I didn't have to open up 12 different bottles and worry they would spoil. You could take out just a little bit, and it did take a little technique to figure out how to tip it properly to get the actual pour out of it. And the gentleman you mentioned who is local, who invented it, does some very good webinars that I attended, where he shows the proper technique and the whole research behind it. And he had his actual prototypes and stuff like that. So interesting device. And when it first came out, I thought, I wasn't thinking restaurant because I'm on the retail side, but I'm thinking every salesperson should have this device so they can properly preserve their wine and serve it. And they don't have to open it up and rush around to all their accounts to have people try it. And that's the benefit, like you said, in the restaurant, to pour something by the glass, an expensive wine, and it opens up so much that the restaurant can do with it now. They can expand their wine by the glass program because everything basically they could have a glass price and sell it.
It's interesting that you bring up your perspective from the retail side of things, because that was exactly my first experience with the Coravin as well. And it was back when I was working retail. So now I'm completely blanking on, how long it's been because it's been a long time. But we saw like the very first iteration of the Coravin when I was at Martin Yeti's in Brighton, and the design of the inventor came as part of a demonstration with one of our distributors to show us how it worked. And you're right, it does take a little bit of skill, but you do it a couple times and it's not so bad. It looks a little bit more scary. I would say, because the first time I use it, I'm like, what am I doing? I'm very, very scared by this device because it's kind of bulky. I think because of the needle and the glass and the gas and those inner workings of it. But it's very interesting technology, and we use it all the time at work. It's been an extremely valuable device for us to use at the wine school, because we every once in a while have students that maybe they can't attend a class live, but they still would like to taste along with us. So we'll make them a little sample of what the class is going to be tasting, but we don't necessarily want to open that bottle of wine a week and a half before it's going to be served, because then we need to open more wine. Like, it wouldn't still be tasting the way that we want it to taste after it had already been opened. So it really has allowed us the benefit of being able to expand how we can give wine to our students and how we can use wines to our benefit, both sticking to our budget, but also being able to let students who maybe aren't in the classroom but are somewhere remotely still taste the exact same wines that we are tasting. The only issue that I've sort of found with them is once you get through half a bottle, if you're still using the Coravin on that, you're inserting so much gas that you're really running through those capsules really, really fast.
Yeah. So when you're removing the liquid, you have to fill that space with the gas. So the more you take out, the more gas you have to put in it. And you had mentioned how it's a bulky. At first, it's kind of intimidating because
it's not so bad though. Like, once you get used to it,
needle, right? It's not like a syringe needle. It's almost like a hard plastic that you feel like it's not going to go through the capsule.
Yeah, it seems extremely delicate,
you want to be
and they
gentle,
do break.
but you really have to push it through the top. So you stand it like grabs the side and pushes down, and you really have to use some force. And then you have to release a lever and pull it out to get the needle out. So it's not something you should be gentle with. You really have to, there's a process behind it. And I think that's where Wine Enthusiast was saying now, instead of the person at the restaurant, your server, coming and going the whole routine with the corkscrew and cutting off the foil. And is it a good thing for restaurants if they come to your table with one of these devices to pour you a glass? And do they do that? They're probably doing that behind the scenes. But there was good points about it saying, people should see that you're taking care how you're serving wines by the glass.
Yeah. And I think there are arguments for both sides, honestly, for whether you want to incorporate it into table service. I would lean towards the side of, yes, let's make this part of the presentation, because it's still such a novel thing. I mean, not a lot of restaurants are using, not everyday restaurants. Not
at the table, I don't think.
Not at the table.
They
but it's kind of cool, because then it sparks conversation, and it's like, oh my God, what's that thing that you're using for my wine? And then it can really lead to, I think, some good educational points for the consumer.
They compared it to like preparing a Caesar salad at your table.
I know, I saw that in the
routine,
article.
which is a good comparison, right? And as wine geeks, I think if I was to order a special wine that's $100 a glass that I know that Coravin, I want to see that they're pouring it out
exactly.
of
You still want to see that bottle, and the fact that you can see that they are literally pulling that wine from that extremely special bottle of wine. I feel like that has power and value. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so we're in agreement. We think it's a good thing for the restaurants. Now, they also said it was a good thing for restaurants because they could serve more large format, or like magnums or something of wine. I've never used it on a larger size bottle. Have you, Kim?
See, and that's the point. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that for a couple of points. Number one, part of it is the gas.
Yeah.
And part of it is also, and I'm not sure how it works on magnums, but I believe that the Coravin, at least the ones that I have used, are made specifically to go on 750 milliliter bottles. They do not work on smaller format. And I've tried it and it doesn't work.
Like a 375,
like
a half
a
size bottle?
Because there has to be, I'm trying to figure out in my mind where the difficulties that I've run into are. I think part of it has to do with where the top of the Coravin rests, and it sometimes with some smaller bottles, it can't push the needle all the way through because the bottle and the neck of the bottle is so small for a
Yeah, I've
small
never
size
tried
bottle.
that
So
on a
I can
small.
imagine it probably does work fine with a Magnum bottle, but I do believe that it was designed for a 750 milliliter. But again, I'm going to go back to that, issue with the gas. And so I also feel like that, all right, if you're already through like half of the bottle doing these small pours, that's where I would stop. And that's where I stop at work. Like if I've gotten halfway through a bottle of wine and I still need to make little samples for people, I'm just going to open that bottle.
Yeah.
Because you spend more on the gas than you do sometimes on the wine. So, it's a little bit of sort of mental money gymnastics, I think, when you're thinking about it from a business perspective, and what is the value of me using this particular device for my wines. And the article brings this up for what wines should you be using this on? Like, does it make sense for you to use this on a bottle of wine that costs $30 for the restaurant and maybe they're selling it for $100, or, a little bit shy of $100, but how much more money are they going to be spending just to keep up that gas canister in their Coravin?
Yeah, they have to weigh the costs of gas versus product. And you don't want to use it for something that's an inexpensive wine because it just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense. And
just from a business perspective.
Right.
But I will say, having been using this device for over a year now, and I have one at home and I use it at work. I've tried bottles that we had, say, Coravin 6 months before, at varying levels of fill in the bottle, white wines, red wines, and the preservation of those wines is really good. So I'm very, very pleased by the product itself. It really does what it says that it will do. Like, it really will preserve that wine. And
yeah, I've
it's
like
nice to rely on that. Like, if I only pulled a couple of samples from a bottle in July, I know that wine will still taste good now. So it makes me feel good that I can use this device and be able to maximize what I can get out of a bottle of wine.
I've always gone back to them after I've Coravin, and really it does preserve them perfect. So what they say, and it does, it really does. And one of the points that Wine Enthusiasts talked about, Kim, I'm not sure when you were at Legals they had this, but some restaurants have what they call private lockers for people's wine. So I can rent basically a wine storage space from the restaurant and stock it with my own wine.
Right.
And then when I go there to eat, they go to my locker and get whatever bottle I want that they're storing for me.
Legals didn't do this, but this is a very like steakhousey kind of things. And I've been to numerous restaurants that do this, that they have like these private lockers for some of their more regular guests that they keep their wine there.
And I know in town in Contro, when they were around, they had the private lockers. So this to me would make great sense. I'm going to my favorite restaurant. I have my wine in a locker, and I'm just going there for lunch. I just want to take one glass of that cab I have in my locker, so they could serve it to me with the Coravin instead of opening a whole bottle and having to be forced to drink it all or waste it. So I thought that was a real great point about the locker service and how that can save you. And over the years, now it's been 10, 15 years that this device is out. They've adapted. They've made really expensive one, thousands of dollars, where it has apps and you can track your inventory, whatever it does, the app. But they also came out with a screw cap. You couldn't use it with a screw cap device once you take the cap off. So now they make a cap. When you take the screw cap off, you put their screw cap on, and it has like a insertion point that you can pierce like 50 times. So
yeah,
have you ever
it's like a mushy.
Yes, it's silicone type
layered
material.
Yeah.
Have you ever used them?
Oh, I use them all the time. Like, I literally used it yesterday. And it's like a multi-layered thing. So there's like one part at the top, and then there are multiple ones in between, and then there's one at the bottom that looks almost like a little bit of like a styrofoam. but it is meant to break up the ability of oxygen to go obviously in and out of the bottle.
It was a
And
big
it works really well.
groundbreaker for them too, because
Yeah.
now all those wines. So then there was only one category left, and that was bubbly, sparkling.
Right, sparkling.
You're never going to with all that pressure, right? So
Yeah,
they
I don't know what
actually
they're going
came
to do
out.
about the sparkling.
They came
And you know,
out with the
I have to
adapter
say
for that.
the screw cap one it's not at quite as good of a seal as the regular device that goes through a cork. So, but also I kind of feel like most wines that are being bottled under screw cap. I mean, do you see any wines that are over like $200 a bottle being bottled by screw cap?
Yeah, no. Well, there's
Like, I'm
some,
not
yeah,
sure.
there's
I
like
mean,
one or two
other
high
than
end
just,
Napa things. Or,
needing a couple of weeks to use that bottle. I don't know about the like keeping it around for months in the
Yeah.
restaurant wine locker with your
But they-
screw cap. It's like just
they
open
did
your
come
bottle of
out-
Sauvignon Blanc and drink it.
They did come out with the sparkling adapter, which
did?
yeah, oh yeah, that's been out. We were talking about that before, and
I
I think
missed
it's
the
going to
bubbly
lead
adapter.
to it's going to lead to being able to probably get some high end sparklings when you go to a restaurant by the
See,
glass.
that would be cool. I would totally use that.
You got to get that one. You're the bubbly
I would
queen. You should have been all over that
I did not know
adapter.
anything about there being a sparkling
Yeah.
wine one.
That's been
All
out
right.
probably a year now.
Oh,
At
I'm going to keep
least.
my eyes open for that one.
And it's as a retailer, it's kind of disappointing to me that the salespeople who are going around to even restaurants or retail, every company should be given a salesperson this device. They shouldn't have to buy this device. They shouldn't have to buy the gas. They should provide it to them. And it would ultimately save them money because most salespeople have to pull a sample bottle if someone wants to try it. They have to go around to how many accounts they go to within a day, within a week. They could actually, with this device, hit more people and show the wines much better with this than if they had to open it and hold it in their car and, it's freezing out one day or it's hot the next day. And I don't know why they don't do it. And at first, a few people were buying them themselves, but maybe because of the gas costs or whatever, they just, no one's doing it anymore. It's very rare. And
Yeah,
the other thing,
and I think a lot of it comes down to who's footing the cost for something. Honestly.
Yeah.
So,
but the suppliers or the wineries should gladly be giving these devices to the people to represent their
see,
products.
and that's the rub. Like, if a supplier was supplying the salesperson with the device so that their cost would therefore stay lower. Because I kind of feel like it's a situation where, well, why does it matter to the wholesaler? Because they're just passing the cost of that sample bottle off to their importer or their supplier. So for the distributor, they're not losing money by sending out their salespeople with the same bottle of wine week after week after week. It doesn't, there's no, it's depletion, but they're not losing any money on it. But I think you're absolutely right that maybe the importers should be the ones to say, okay, we really would like you to show this bottle of Barolo or this bottle of Bordeaux or this bottle of Vouvray that retails for $50, $60 a bottle, but we can't have you open it because it's, going to start going downhill within a couple of days. But if we provide you with the Coravin, then that seems like it would benefit everyone. So
the same way with the restaurants. If I'm a winery and you have my wine on your list and you want people to consume it in peak condition by the glass, I'd say you have to serve it with a Coravin. And for that, just like when people, you notice the corkscrews, every winery in the world gives out waiter's corkscrew with their name on it, right? With the winery name. Why not give out a Coravin and have your winery name on it or some sort of advertising on it? So it shows.
Because it's 100 times more expensive.
Well, still, you're going to give them, 100 corkscrews, or you're going to give them one Coravin.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear you. I think that's I think that it's definitely a way to look at it, that, maybe we should be rethinking how we think about how we present either wines on our side of the industry or how we make it so that every single glass that we pour to a client, to a guest, is something special and lives up to what the winemaker wanted from that bottle of wine. And I feel like the Coravin really does that.
The other thing I noticed on this device, Kim, and I'm sure you run into it, I don't know how you handle it though, but you have to make sure once that needle's inserted and taken out, you have to kind of blast air through the thing to get everything out of the tube, the needle, and you have to clean the needles and replace them once in a while because they do start growing bacteria, and now you're inserting it from one wine to the next.
And so they do break.
So
ours only last for a couple of months, I would say.
What do? You serve Coravin one bottle. Now you go to the next. Do you run it through water? Do you wipe it down? Or you just insert it into the next?
I usually wipe it down. Some of the issues that we have found is that you absolutely, if you have a bottle of wine that has a wax seal on the top of it, you absolutely must remove the wax, because if you put the Coravin needle through the wax, then you've sort of gunked up your needle, because now it has like a little plug of wax in it. So we have to be careful and pay attention to how bottles are capped. So it's like, well, do we remove the capsule? Like, do you want to do that? Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. And it really is sort of amazing to see all the different enclosure type things that different bottles of wine will have on them. And we run into the wax thing all the time. I think because a lot of, sometimes we do classes that we're pulling wines from places that are still doing sort of more of those traditional enclosures. So, we do a lot of things from like Croatia and Armenia and, a lot of places in Eastern Europe. And you often will find, Portugal too, you'll often find wax on them. So we have to be careful to make sure. Yeah. Because of tradition, but you also don't want to gunk up your Coravin. So
I always take the nozzle and I run it under hot water too, because there's a little bit that builds up in the nozzle that's pouring.
Yeah.
So
I'll do like a on mine to make sure that it's clear.
You get sprayed a little bit, but I run the hot water, then spray it again. So once again, wasting gas, right? So I probably just wasted 2 pours cleaning it after. I think it's well worth it for our listeners to seek it out. If you want to preserve your wines, you just want to have a glass every once in a while. You want to start maybe a collection, or like Kim was saying early on the show, if you have an older vintage or something, every once in a while you just want to taste it, see how it's evolving. It's really great for that. And I can see restaurants hopefully adapting more and coming up with some sort of showmanship or something at the table where it would be good for, we as geeks approve it for restaurants. So I hope more people do that. Thank you for joining us today on The Wonderful World of Wine. We've been your hosts, Mark Lindsay and Kim Simone, exploring all things wine with you. You can find more information about Kim on her website at commonwealthwineschool.com. You can find more information about myself at franklinliquors.com. We're here every week on Franklin Radio, WFPR 102.9 FM. You can find our past episodes on SoundCloud or iTunes. For any questions or comments, if you want to yell at Kim for anything, it's at Facebook. We're The Wonderful World of Wine. We're also on Twitter at Wine Education, and we're on Instagram, which is fairly new for us. I hope you find us on there. We love posting all sorts of educational things on there. We'll see you next week. Cheers.